Hello, I'm ROSLYN NIEVES, and I'm with my colleague and co-host, Mr. Rodney Cummins. Welcome to Queen's Perspectives. It's Black History Month, and we have a magnificent show for you. Rodney?
Thanks, Roz. Today we're having an amazing conversation with BIZZY AMOR, a Queens native who is an artist, a director, a producer, and a true visionary. Truly looking forward to it, Roz.
That sounds good, Rodney. So let's go to our tribute to the life and legacy of the legendary Cicely Tyson. She was born December 19th, 1924 in Harlem, New York, and passed away at the age of 96 on January 28, 2021. Cicely Tyson made a huge impact in the world as a model and actress. Her career spanning more than 7 decades, as she is known for her portrayal of strong African American women. Here is just a few things that she is known for. Her performance as Rebecca Morgan in Sounder, 1972. The autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman in 1974. Diary of a Mad Black Woman in 2005. The Help in 2011. How to Get Away with Murder, 2015 to 2020. She played Annalise Keating's mom. Cicely Tyson was a spectacular actress and embodied every role she ever took. Cicely Tyson was awarded the prestigious Presidential Medal of Freedom by President Obama for her contribution to the arts and American culture. She co-founded the Dance Theater of Harlem with Arthur Mitchell. Tyson received 3 Primetime Emmy Awards, 1 Tony Award, and an honorary Oscar. Don't go away. When we return, we will welcome singer, actor, composer, and 4-time Grammy Award recipient, CHAPMAN Roberts, who also has a special tribute for Cicely Tyson.
Did you know there's a link between diabetes and cardiovascular disease? If you have diabetes, you're more likely to have risk factors associated with cardiovascular disease, including obesity and high blood pressure. Take steps today to reduce your risk for cardiovascular disease, manage your A1C, blood pressure, and cholesterol levels, develop or maintain healthy lifestyle habits, and learn ways to manage stress. Take medicines as prescribed by your doctor. Stop smoking or using other tobacco products. Take diabetes to heart. Visit niddk.nih.gov to learn more.
Welcome back to Queen's Perspectives. We're celebrating Black History Month and paying tribute to the life and legacy of the legendary Cicely Tyson. CHAPMAN, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I'm glad I could be here.
CHAPMAN, when did you meet Cicely Tyson?
I met her many years ago, maybe as long ago as perhaps, can I say, 45 years ago. And that was a brief encounter through miles. It was very brief. And then I encountered her again when I was asked to be a minder at Lena Horne's funeral. And in particular for Jeffrey Holder and Carmen de Lavallade. And so I took care of them. And then somebody said, we need some help, because they hadn't asked anybody to be a minder at the funeral. So the ushers at the Catholic Church on Park Avenue, 92nd and Park, didn't know who anybody was. And so they knew that I would know. And so I took care of Vanessa Williams and Jesse Norman and Gil Noble, Dionne Warwick, Leslie Uggams, Diane Carroll, and Miss Tyson came up the stairs and looked at me as though she knew who I was, and I know she didn't recognize me from that many years ago. And I said, "Oh, okay, her too." And I went and sat her there. So that was the next time we encountered. Um, when we did Black Stars of the Great White Way, which Norm Lewis and I produced at Carnegie Hall, we honored Stephen Bird, who's the most prominent Broadway producer that we know of right now. And he wanted Cicely Tyson to present the Black Stars of the Great White Way award to him. And I said, fine, whoever you want, it's your award. And he then said, and I want you to write her speech. I said, okay, I'll do that. And I wrote the speech. Well, it came time for her to come on stage at Carnegie Hall. And I went into the wings and I said to her, how would you like to be introduced? And she said, just say, please welcome Miss Cicely Tyson. And as I was walking back to the podium, that little devil on my shoulder said, you know, I'm not going to do that. And I went to the podium and I said, I'm not going to tell you who the next person you're going to meet is, but I'm sure you will be pleased when they arrive. And I went and I opened up those awesome doors, you know, at Carnegie Hall, when they open so mysteriously and you don't know who's behind it. And I opened the
Yes.
door and she walked out and she put her arm in my arm and she said under her breath, I didn't hear my name. But then
That's just like you. That's just like you, Chapman. That's just like you,
I didn't
Chapman.
hear.
What happened next?
And there was, of course, tumultuous applause because she needed no introduction. You know, it was interesting to me because I thought, doesn't she know that everybody knows who she is? You know,
Definitely.
the last time I saw her was again at an auspicious occasion because she spoke at Arthur Mitchell's memorial. She talked about the relationship between Arthur and herself from when they were struggling artists down in the village on 9th Street and 2nd Avenue. And of course, nobody had any money and they weren't getting paid for performances. And she talked about the fact that one day Arthur came to her and said, I want to form a dance theater parliament. She said, let's go. And with meager funds and with all the struggles that everybody goes through and try to fundraise and create a new phenomenon, they took off. And the rest of that is, as they say, history.
And that brings me to Black Stars of the Great White Way. How did it start?
Well, you know, there's a photographer. Her name is Carmen de Jesus, and you can't see all of it, but I think that photograph up there, she took that photograph of me because she was photographing theatrical people who wanted to be photographed as a character that they wanted to be photographed as. And I chose Pope Victor I. Pope Victor I was the black pope, 600 and something, and he was the one who infused Latin into the liturgy of the Catholic Church. And he was born in Tunisia. And at that time, which means he was African, and at that time, Latin was the language of Tunisia. And he infused it into the Catholic liturgy. And he also decided that there will be a separation of church and state so that that is what set up the Vatican as being its own sovereign state. So he was very important in the history of the Catholic Church. And in this photograph, he decided he has a Quran on his lap, and then he has a Bible on top of the Quran, which was my father's Bible. And then he's wearing an ankh, and there is also the Greek Orthodox cross, and he's wearing a yarmulke. He has a decision that he has to make that he knows if he makes that decision that he is dead. But he knows that he has to make that decision not for his own aggrandizement, but for the benefit of all mankind. And this is his moment of decision that we've depicted in that photograph. Now, when I finished it, I said to her, is there a photograph? Because there's a photograph that I have here in my house that was taken in 1959 of all the great jazz artists on the stoop there in Harlem.
Yes.
And I said, is there a photograph of all great African American theater people, in particular Broadway performers? And she said, no. I said, well, why don't we do one? She says, why don't you do one? I said, okay. So what I did was, I said, well, you photograph it. She said, yeah. So what I did was, I came home and I sent out 10 emails because I don't have Facebook and stuff. And I said, I sent out 10 emails and I said, listen, this is what I want to do. And I want you to meet me on Times Square at 11 o'clock, I think it was October 7th, at 11 o'clock on the red stairs at Times Square. And then I arranged to have it shut down and had called several friends to come and help me stage manage and choreograph everything. And we got there at 10:30 and there was nobody there. And there was a neighbor of mine in Manhattan Plaza where I live. And he told me, he says, that was amazing. He said, I got there and there was nobody there. And I put my head down on the table and I said, oh, this is going to be a disaster. And he said, I went to sleep for 15 minutes and I woke up and 750 people showed up. They were coming out of the subway like ants. And some of them hadn't seen each other in 30, 40 years. There was my first voice teacher, Andrew Frierson, who sang with City Opera. There was Melba Moore, the Tony Award winner that I was in Hair with. There was Mrs. Denzel Washington Pauletta that I was in Jesus Christ Superstar with. There was Norm Lewis. There was Maurice Hines. There was Angela Bassett. There was Sam Jackson. There was Mickey Grant, who wrote Don't Bother Me, I Can't Cope, and was the first African-American composer to ever write a Broadway show. I mean, it was absolutely amazing. Jeffrey Holder, Lewis Johnson. It was just absolutely amazing. And when it was finished, and there were great reunions, as I said, people hadn't seen each other in a long time. All the kids from Lion King meeting all these older people that they probably never heard of, but they realized something was going on.
Definitely.
And afterwards, Norm Lewis walked up to me and he said, I've got this idea. He said, I've got this idea of doing a performance at Carnegie Hall with all African-American men who have appeared on Broadway. And I said, well, that's a great idea. Why don't we do it? He says, okay, let's do it. Well, I wanted to give it a theme. And so the theme became, after the great jazz composers of Broadway, people don't understand that the most influential music in the history of Broadway has in fact been jazz. Eubie Blake
Definitely.
opened on Broadway at 64th and Broadway because they wouldn't let them come downtown, right across from where Lincoln Center is now, in a show called Shuffle Along in 1921. In that show was a girl named Josephine Baker, a man named Paul Robeson, and a young lady named Florence Mills. The show was a smash hit. It ran for the longest time. And a young lady named Blanche Calloway, who was Cab Calloway's sister. Then we went from there all the way up until, I would say, Bubbling Brown Sugar, which introduced the music. And if I'm talking too much, you asked me a question after answer.
No, that's fine. That's beautiful history, Chapman. Beautiful history. Go ahead.
It is. It's truly
Go ahead.
magnificent.
It's beautiful
Because
history.
what we realized, yeah, thank you. What we realized is that Louis Armstrong made his debut on Broadway, and he made it in a show called Hot Chocolates. And for the entr'acte, they would start the band to play, and when people came back in for intermission, they had a guy singing down in the orchestra pit, and instead of the people going to their seats, they would go look into the orchestra pit to see who was singing. And the producer said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put that guy on the stage. So he took him out of the orchestra pit, put him on the stage, and that was a man named Louis Armstrong, because the score for the Broadway show had been written by Fats Waller, and the song was Ain't Misbehavin'. So what I wanted to do was to play tribute to all of the great jazz composers of Broadway for the last 100 years. And that's what we did.
Nice.
That's how it came about.
And that's beautiful. And what I also think is beautiful, you and I started chatting, and we started chatting about Cicely Tyson. And you said, Roz, I put together a tribute for Cicely Tyson myself with Larry Patterson. I was like, oh my God. So let's do this show together. I love the way everything just came together. So tell us about the Cicely Tyson tribute from Black Stars of the Great White Way that you produced with Larry Patterson.
Well, you see, in 1975, when Anwar Sadat, the president, the black president of African president of Egypt, was assassinated, I was commissioned to write a piece in commemoration of him and present it at the All Night Soul Jazz Festival at St. Peter's. And I completed the piece, and it was quite a success. And then years later, I was commissioned by the British government to do a piece, and I called it The Gospel According to Broadway, to do a piece in commemoration of the cessation of the transatlantic slave trade. And at the end of it, I, with the BBC Concert Orchestra and the Michael Terry Singers from Cleveland, Ohio, which is my hometown, from my dad's church, and with the London Community Choir, which is the choir that sings Circle of Life in Lion King, the movie. So we put us together to make that celebration. And it was recorded live and broadcast. And I've used it several times before. We used it to pay tribute to all those great jazz composers at the end of the concert at Carnegie Hall. And then we did it again at the National Black Theater Festival a few years ago. We did it from my brother Jacques' funeral a few years after that. And so when this came up, I said, I'm going to do the same thing. So there's a young man named Larry Patterson who's an up-and-coming videographer. And I said, Larry, here's I have an assignment for you, and let's see what happens. And he said, okay. I said, I want you to go through photographs of Cicely Tyson, and I want you to find the youngest photograph you can, and then I want you to make a chronicling of her life. And then I want it to build into a grand crescendo. And then I want the last frame to be the cover of her book. And then I want the applause as the choir is singing. And that's that choir that we assembled in London. And he did it, and we sat and we edited and pulled some things together. And that's what I'm happy to have been able to share with you. And I was so happy when you called. And he thinks he's going to have a heart attack because he couldn't imagine something like that would have happened so fast in his young life.
And it took on legs of its own, as they say. So let's take a look at this beautiful tribute to Cicely Tyson.
Great. The piece is called Legacy.
Chapman, that was absolutely beautiful. Her legacy
Amazing.
lives on. What do you think, Rodney?
Oh, it was amazing. Oh, it was so heartfelt and just very warm. The crazy part is that, Chapman, had you had Facebook, I don't know how many people would have been out there, man. You said you only emailed people. You got all those people out there through an email?
I sent out 10 emails.
Listen. When Chapman calls, everybody comes running and the word just spreads. He didn't need
Wow.
Facebook, emails, social media. He was his own social media. Am I right, Chapman? Come on. It's true.
Well, yeah,
It's
but
true.
thank you for giving us the opportunity to be heard.
Thank you, Chapman, for that beautiful tribute and for coming on Queen's Perspectives. Don't go away. We'll be right back after this brief message. Welcome back to Queen's Perspectives. Rodney, tell us a little bit more about Biz AMOR.
BIZZY AMOR happens to be a Queens native that I really was looking forward to actually, doing this interview with, because he's such a creative in every sense of the word. His multifaceted approach to the term living really inspires me through each and every conversation. And it was something I was really looking forward to just, sharing with the world. So without further ado, I guess, ladies and gentlemen, BIZZY AMOR.
Yeah. Okay. Black history, know that I'm black history. Chariot it cometh, but always it passed, missing me. I need a Harriet. Slavery mentality, always minus when I tally it. I'm still missing like 40 acres. Still I wake up grateful to learn the infinite. 40 rules in my eye, and you hear them all in my sentences. I went to 44 Bed-Stuy, Marcus Garvey. Had black teachers feed me knowledge, wouldn't often starve. I'm just pointing out a grateful moment, cause as a man now, the younger me can better see the great components. Cause somewhere we got low.
Yes, sir. BIZZY AMOR, ladies and gentlemen. That one's called Thrones in America. Biz, man, I just want to always start off right. So I just want to say thank you. Thank you for joining us, man.
Shit, thank you for inviting me, man.
I never really ever asked you this now that I come to think about it. How'd you come up with the name BIZZY AMOR?
I gotta thank Queens for BIZZY AMOR, because I moved to Queens when I was about 13, 14. And being able to make it into my mid-30s, which is a blessing, because so many of my friends didn't. So the blessing that is reaching, mid-30s, and knowing the effect that 2 decades in Queens had, it helped to give me this sense of being, right? Because the thing that I love about Queens is that Queens is so diverse. There are more languages spoken in Queens than there are anywhere else in the world. To be brought up in that, it helps to make you more individually diverse, right? And so, you and I have had the great benefit of traveling the world separately and together. And when we go to other places, we could get up to speed a lot quicker because we were honed, we were trained, our teeth were cut in a place as diverse as Queens. So I think, me being BIZZY AMOR, busy, B-I-Z-Z-Y, being a play on being active, and AMOR, love in Spanish, actively engaged in the things that I love to do, but understanding that I can be diverse in my doing portfolio because of the diversity that existed around me in Queens County. So, that definitely has a lot to do with it.
A few years back, you coined the phrase "work like Mike," and then obviously, with the passing of Kobe Bryant last year, you dedicated that term, and you rephrased it to now become "work like Kobe." Tell us what you feel the difference is between their work ethic and how they've influenced you as an artist.
felt apropos, and not just because he passed, unfortunately, but beginning with the work like Mike, that just speaks to how I felt as a Black youth in an urban environment, you know, greatly shaped by the legacy of Michael Jordan. Work like Kobe's is that it's about being relentless. In our circle, you know, we often talk about how Kobe Bryant was immensely talented, but he was talented, at least I feel, through the nature of how often he trained to be that talented. And when you look at Kobe Bryant from a basketball lens, he put that work in to be one of the best ever at something that's incredibly difficult to be good at. And then he was right there.
Yeah.
He was at the cusp of taking that and paralleling it into so many different industries. And then that's when we lost him.
Yeah.
So we didn't just lose a basketball player. We didn't lose a Hall of Famer. We lost a trailblazer. Somebody who was literally opening up doors to help people understand that people who look like him can do special things. So working like Kobe is about all of us picking up that mantle to do our part so that we're not so reliant on just a single Kobe Bryant.
Bro, no, you're 100% right about that, man. Kobe will truly be missed. His passion for the game, his work ethic was definitely inspirational. I know it also inspired you to make a piece at the end of the year. The 34 collection. Tell us, you know, about that journey. You know, tell us what it took to actually put together such a masterful piece of work at the end of a challenging year like 2020.
Thank you for spending time with any piece of the 34 collection or just in general. Time is the only currency that matters, so I appreciate that. So the 34 collection was a collection that I released that coincided with my 34th birthday. Initially, I wanted to just release a new music project, right? What would have been like my 16th music project. I've made a lot of music, so I was all right, let me take my 34 favorite songs and put them together. So that became a list of 34. And I was like, well, what else can I put together? So I said, all right, well, we're gonna put out a merchandise collection. I'm actually wearing one of the pieces. It has titles from like the last couple of projects. I'm like, well, I think I want to put together a book. So it's like, okay, I could put together 34 life lessons based on questions that I mind from friends and family around the world. So those 3 things. And then to cap it off, I did a documentary. So we broke it up to become 34 episodes in a docuseries.
Right.
It seems crazy to me to not just be writing or ideating or sharing, discussing, editing, thinking. Like even with this beautiful series that you're doing something that gets to live longer than you do. You get addicted to the idea of like, wait, I can affect my legacy. And it's not a vain thing. It's more like, okay, let's put out things that live longer than we do, but that carry a certain spirit that can help to educate another person.
All right, bro, I'm gonna throw you one quick curveball. Given the fact that it's Black History Month, can you tell us which African-American historical figure you associate yourself with most?
Gordon Parks, one of the first Black directors of a film. Being the polymath that he was, right? Being multifaceted, diverse, jack of all trades. You would know him as a photographer, but he was also a film director. He actually directed all of the original Shaft movies. You know, so to see a man of color, it seems like a foregone thought now because we have access to so many things. I mean, we're still extremely limited, unfortunately, but we have access to a million times more than even he had. So you got to imagine that he was very good at what he had to do in order to present things that have become timeless.
Biz, man, thank you for joining us, man, taking the time out just to bless us with your presence. Really look forward to all the wonderful things that you have coming out in the near future. And we'll be here to support you along the entire way. All the best, bro. Thanks again.
Rodney, I have to say that was an amazing interview. It was so insightful. I liked every aspect of it and what it stood for, from Kobe Bryant to what he was talking about, you know, how he strived and produced stuff and how he pulled his brand together. It was very good. Very nice piece.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
Who who you're going to have for us next time. You know, that level keeps getting higher and higher and higher,
You know,
because that was awesome. I have to say, Ronnie, that was really good. I was sitting on the edge of my seat. I enjoyed that thoroughly. So who do we have next time? Mr.
I'm always trying to raise
Cultural
the bar.
Creator. Keep raising
Trying
that
to
bar. Keep that bar
do the
going.
best that
Just
I
like
can.
just like Chapman Roberts said, you know, listen, it's
Yep.
the art and the work and the hard work that pulls everybody together. He didn't need any
Yeah, it
social
is.
media. Just his work stood tall. So
Oh yeah.
who do we
Oh
have
yeah.
next?
So next week, I'm really also excited about this one. This is next week with Patricia Robinson. It's a theater company called Fanicky African Dance Troupe. They're working on a new project this year called Behind the Waterfall. So, you know, interesting to see how it's going to pan out. You know, during obviously we're still within the pandemic and just kind of, you know, working our way out. But I'm so hoping that you know there's a great turnout for her event, and
Mhm.
you know, looking forward to that interview as well.
Excellent. Sounds interesting. And all our viewers will be looking for it too. Unfortunately,
Awesome.
that's it for today's show. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. And we'll see you next time on Queen's Perspectives. Good night.